Earlier today, I want to say about around 4:30, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, news broke that Brian Flores is filing a class action lawsuit in the U.S. District Court of Southern New York, such that's New York City. And he's filing this against the National Football League, the New York Giants, the Miami Dolphins, and the Denver Broncos, as well as the other teams in the league. And essentially, this boils down to racially discriminatory hiring practices by the NFL, alleges sham interviews with the Denver Broncos. With in the 53-page court filing, he states that when he showed up for the interview with the Broncos, it was clear that John Elway, the general manager at the time, and Joe Ellis, the CEO of the team at the time, showed up, and I quote, disheveled and showing signs of being out the night prior, heavily drinking. They didn't really care for the interview. It was just to check off the box for the Rooney Rule. And for those of you that don't know what the Rooney Rule is, it's a rule in place by the NFL that mandates teams interview minority candidates for head coaching positions or positions in management type of deal. So they have to comply with the Rooney Rule when they go through these processes to fill vacancies in teams. So you have that for the Denver Broncos. He goes on to allege other sham interviews and other coaches that are having this problem. That's why it's a class action lawsuit. So any other people that are feeling the same issues or can prove the same issues can join in this suit against the NFL. He goes on to allege that the Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, I'm going to put this in lawyer terms, essentially incentivized him to lose games in 2019, the air quote tank for two a year. He alleges that Stephen Ross was willing to pay him $100,000 for each loss to secure the number one draft pick. This is when they were, ripping everything down the studs, trading away all their assets. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills and Kiko Alonso and Minka Fitzpatrick. The list goes on and on. Willing to pay $100K for this, and then also alleged that Stephen Ross is trying to get Brian Flores to tamper with a, quote, prominent quarterback under contract with another team. That prominent quarterback has come out to be Tom Brady. Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network. He actually had the story in 2020 when free agency started that the Dolphins were a potential landing spot for the Miami Dolphins, and I pew-pewed this. And Tony Pauline, props to you for getting that report right. But it's a 53-page document. You can find this online. That's just paraphrasing here. My personal take, the incentivizing to lose aspect, I think, is really minuscule in the grand scheme of the racial, implications of the hiring practices of the NFL, if those are proven to be true. I had a pretty spirited debate with the person offline before we recorded. Teams tank all the time to get the number one draft pick. Mm-hmm. So really, it's going to come down to, can Brian Flores produce an email or a bank transaction or a text message that shows that, hey, I'm going to wire you $100,000 to get these losses. But to the bigger issue, Jay, and we hinted at this with Bill Belichick in text messages, Brian Flores found out that the New York Giants hired Brian Daboll through a text message from Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick thought he was texting Brian Daboll himself, congratulating him on the hire. And when Flores responds back saying, "Hey, coach, just to confirm, are you talking about Brian Daboll or Brian Flores?"
And I got the full text message here so I can read it out for the
go listeners. For it.
So Belichick says, "Sounds like you have landed. Congrats." Brian Flores says, "Did you hear something I didn't hear?" Belichick goes, "Giants?" ? Flores says, "I interview on Thursday. I think I have a shot at it." Belichick comes back with, "Got it. I hear from Buffalo and New York Giants that you are their guy. Hope it works out if you want it." And then Flores comes back with, That's definitely what I want. I hope you're right, coach. Thank you. And then he says, Coach, are you talking to Brian Flores or Brian Daboll? Just making sure. And then Belichick comes back with saying, sorry, I bleeped this up. I double checked and misread the text. I think they are naming Dayball. I'm sorry about that, BB. And then Flores says, thanks, Bill. But the fact that Brian Flores has to say, Coach, are you talking to Brian Flores or Brian Dayball? Kind of, like, listen, I don't want to make it out to be that Bill Belichick is losing his mind and he's a senile old man. But, like, what else am I supposed to think when you're 70 years old and you can't even figure out who you're texting, right? Like, if you make questionable decisions on the field when you evaluate talent like Tom Brady and then you can't text the correct person, like, I think that's absolutely hysterical. And the fact that Bill Belichick is tied up in this, it's what makes it so funny, is the fact that he's the guy that always wants to be in the back, in the shadows, don't put in distractions on the team. And I know we're not in the regular season right now, but eventually he will be asked about this.
I mean, this is not going away. He's going to be more than likely in a deposition in this class action lawsuit. And he's going to have to explain these text messages. You're going to see him on primetime, news highlights going into the Southern District Court of New York, a federal courthouse, going over these lawsuit issues. Like, Jay, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is a monumental case in the NFL. Like, you could liken this to back in the 70s for Major League Baseball when Curt Flood went to the U.S. Supreme Court to try to fight the reserve clause for Major League Baseball, essentially led to free agency a couple of years after that. I mean, this is what we're looking at. We always talk about the hiring practice issues of the NFL, and they're just giving us lip service. And, we have all the Rooney Rule, and we have things on helmets that end racism, and it takes all of us. But if these allegations are true, and at this point, on February 1st, which ironically enough is the beginning of Black History Month, these are just allegations. But if Flores and potentially the rest of the people involved in this class action lawsuit can bring to court, proof of these issues and sham interviews and whatnot, this is a monumental or earth-shaking, ground bedrock, shaking issue for the NFL moving forward. Like, we are now living in a different NFL world than we did maybe 4 hours ago today. It is insane.
And this
the
is all
implications that could have.
This is all still very fresh. I mean, this got dropped, on Twitter just about 4 hours ago. I truly haven't even been able to run through all the facts on this. I'm just kind of piecemealing it right now for this podcast. And obviously, as the weeks come, we'll keep on continuing to cover this story. But right off the bat, Puma, like, if he can somehow prove with hard evidence, because right now it seems to be a he said kind of thing, right? I mean, Bill Belichick said this to me. I feel like he said this to me. Like, how does Bill Belichick obviously connect with the Giants organization? He's not a paid employee for them, right? So I wonder how they're going to make that, how they're going to provide that hard evidence. But let's say if they do provide hard evidence and they do find out that this obviously is a sham, and we all know it's a sham. We all know the Rooney Rule is a sham. The fact that there's only, one African-American minority head coach of an NFL squad right now being Mike Tomlin, and there's like the league itself is 75-80% African-American. I mean, I think that in itself means it's not working out, so they've got to revamp those practices. And I think this case could bring enough attention and heat on the NFL to revamp those protocols and procedures. Now, however, the question is, what hard evidence is there? Like, is it simply these text messages? Because how incriminating are these text messages, right? At the end of the day, Bill Belichick isn't a paid employee of the Giants. He is just a friend. He just got information. He could easily be like, hey, man, listen, he can just play the card of, I had a few drinks. I knew I was texting. Like, it could be something as similar, as dumb as that. But what kind of hard proof does the Brian Flores camp have,
Right, exactly. And, people out there on Twitter are speculating and calling for Stephen Ross to, be forced to sell the team. And I just laugh. It's like, okay, you look at the Beltway and you look at Dan Snyder and the Washington football team and the workplace issues and issues as being charitable to the house of horrors that was going on back there. And all the NFL did was they kind of put a sham fine. He voluntarily stepped down from the day-to-day operations, and him being Dan Snyder hand over operations to his wife and he was kind of the man behind the curtain nobody really saw anymore. And the NFL may or may not have sold out John Gruden, so they didn't have to really come to light with all the other email issues that John Gruden and Bruce Allen may or may not have had. You expect Stephen Ross to be forced to sell the team because he wanted his head coach to lose games to get the number 1 draft pick? If that's the case, are we going to haul, Bidwell and the Arizona Cardinals because they got the number 1 pick for Kyler Murray? Are we going to do that for the Jacksonville Jaguars for Trevor Lawrence? Are we going to do that for the Jets trying to get the number 1 pick, but they had to settle for the Mormon missile? The list goes on and on. Are we going to do that for the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that's in the Super Bowl right now because they did tanking the right way and they got Joe Burrow? Are we going to haul them up to the Southern District Court of New York for a deposition on whether or not they incentivized losing? I'm not going to say they threw a game, especially this day and age with gambling and whatnot. If you're a gambler, I think you have the sense to know that this team is trying to lose on purpose, so let's not actually bet that team. If Flores came out and said, hey, Stephen Ross told me to not cover the spread and wanted me to shave points, which I believe is actually a federal offense, then that's a different discussion we're having. But to say, hey, I want us to lose to do this rebuild properly, to me, that's a bridge too far. I'm going to need emails. I'm going to need bank transactions to prove that.
Well, that's the thing, right? If any time an owner if his team did something questionable and he has to sell the team, there would be no more owners of NFL teams. It'd be rotating. It'd be a rotating.
Jerry Jones doesn't have skeletons in his closet.
Dude,
stop it.
I'm the
Bob Kraft.
Exactly. I'm the biggest Patriots fan, but his team got caught up with Spygate and Deflategate, 2 cheating scandals. What are we talking about here? If we're really going to start penalizing these owners and having them sell their teams for quote unquote inappropriate behavior, whether it's in the front office or on the football field, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying we would have new owners on a 4-year term basis, basically. I think that part of it, Puma, is going to blow over. I think the part with the $100,000 a game for losing is going to blow over because I don't think Stephen Ross is dumb enough to have something in writing saying this stuff. Like, if there really is a wire going for $100,000 from Stephen Ross's account to, let's say, Brian Flores' account for throwing a game, that in itself is stupid. And I think at that point, you shouldn't have a team just because you're that dumb. You feel me? That stuff is gonna blow over. The other stuff, though, the racist, hiring practices, that stuff is gonna linger, and that stuff is gonna be something that I think when we look back at the NFL could possibly be a good thing. I think down the line from now, 5 years from now, maybe this is what is the catalyst needed to potentially change those rules and regulations and maybe revamp the Rooney Rule to get more African-American head coaches in there, man. I'm not one of those guys that believes you should just hire off of the color of your skin to fill a quota, this and that. But I do think it's embarrassing that there's one head coach that is an African-American or minority in a league that is 75-80% minority. So I think that needs to be revamped.
Oh, for sure. It's just Mike Tomlin, and then if you look, minorities as a whole in the head coaching pool, I believe it's just 2. It's Tomlin and Ron Rivera. And then for the general manager position, I think it's just, less than 5, with Chris Greer being like the lead general manager. And it's a shame. It's a sham. I don't know what you can do to really change this. I know the Broncos are going to be up for sale. Obviously, having a minority team owner would change things for sure. But let's say for argument's sake, let's call it for what it is, a rich white guy. Let's say Jeff Bezos buys the Denver Broncos. Then what are you going to do? Are you going to deny the sale? How does I know all the league owners vote on that, but are they going to deny the sale to Jeff Bezos because of this? I just don't know the logistics of how that would work. I'm all on board to have more minority coaches. I just don't know how we're going to get there. Mm-hmm.